In the last video, I told you that I was going to start looking at the most common ingredients found in men's sexual enhancement products. Today, I want to tell you the whole story about ginseng, because when I actually looked at the research, ginseng surprised me. Here's the big question. Does ginseng really help erectile dysfunction? The answer surprised me, because some studies say yes. There really is some evidence that it does. But then I looked at what actually happened to the men in those studies, and the answer became a lot more complicated, because there's another side of the story that you're probably not going to hear when someone is trying to sell you a bottle. And I think that you should hear both sides before you spend your money. So let's start with the good news. Ginseng contains compounds called ginsenosides. Laboratory and animal research suggests that these compounds may increase nitric oxide activity and help relax the smooth muscles involved in an erection. And that's really interesting because nitric oxide plays an important role in getting an erection. It's also part of the biological pathway involved when prescription ED medications work. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that ginseng works like Viagra, because it doesn't. But there is enough here that researchers decided to test ginseng in men who actually had erectile dysfunction. And some of the results were encouraging. There was one double-blind crossover study involving 45 men with clinically diagnosed ED. The men were given Korean red ginseng for 8 weeks, and 60% of the men reported that the ginseng improved their erections. Researchers also found improvements in erectile function scores and penile tip rigidity compared with a placebo. So, unlike some of the ingredients that we're going to talk about in this series, there really is some clinical research behind ginseng. Well, now we need to look at the other side. Here's what happens when we look at all of the studies. First of all, 45 men, that isn't very many. So instead of relying on one small study, let's look at what happened when researchers examined the evidence as a whole. A Cochrane Systematic review looked at 9 studies involving 587 men with mild to moderate erectile dysfunction. And that's where the picture becomes much less impressive. When erectile function was measured using validated questionnaires, the average improvement from ginseng was small enough that the researchers considered it trivial and not clinically important. And their certainty in much of the evidence was also low. But here's something that's interesting. When researchers simply asked the men whether their ability to have intercourse had improved, ginseng did better than the placebo. So, what do we do with that? Some men apparently believed that it helped him, and some individuals studied showed improvements. But when researchers measured erectile function using standardized questionnaires, and then they combined all of the evidence, the average improvement was small. So that's why I don't think it's fair to tell you that ginseng doesn't work, because the research doesn't say that. But I also don't think it's fair for somebody selling you ginseng to make you believe that science has proven it as an effective treatment for ED, because the research doesn't say that either. The answer? Well, it's somewhere in between. Now, here's something I think you need to know before you spend money on any ginseng product. You see, there was something else in these studies that caught my attention. The study where 60% of the men reported improvement, do you know how much Korean red ginseng they were taking? 900 milligrams 3 times a day. That's 2,700 milligrams every day. And some of the other studies have tested similarly large daily amounts. Some used 1,000 milligrams 3 times a day. Most of the ginseng supplements that you're going to find on store shelves, they contain between 100 and 600 milligrams. Now, I don't want you to hear that and think, hey, okay, Bill, we'll just take more capsules. Please don't do that. Different ginseng products aren't necessarily equivalent. There are different preparations, different extracts, and different concentrations of the active compounds. So you cannot simply compare the number of milligrams in one bottle with the number of milligrams that was used in the clinical trial and assume that that's the same thing. And the Cochrane Systematic Review specifically noted that even the doses used in the studies themselves may have been too low to produce meaningful results. So, you are potentially buying a supplement at a fraction of the dose that already showed only modest results in small studies. And that is something that you should know before you decide whether to spend your money. And then there's one more problem. If the ginseng is part of a proprietary blend, the label may not even tell you how much ginseng you're getting. Now, it might tell you the total amount of the blend, but not the amount of each individual ingredient. So how are you supposed to compare that with the amount they used in the research? You can't. And seeing the word ginseng on the label tells you very little about whether what's inside the bottle resembles what the researchers actually tested. What kind of ginseng is it? What preparation? What extract? How much is there? How much of the active compounds does it contain? These are much better questions than simply, does it have ginseng? And now we get to something that's more important, whether ginseng works or not. This is the part that most supplement companies are never going to tell you. Ginseng can react with a significant number of medications. And the medications it interacts with, well, those are exactly what many men are already taking. If you're taking medication for diabetes, pay attention. Ginseng may lower your blood sugar. Combine ginseng with insulin or other glucose-lowering medications, and your blood sugar could drop dangerously low. That's what doctors call hypoglycemia. Now, ginseng may also interfere with blood clotting, and studies involving the blood thinner warfarin have produced conflicting results. Now, that doesn't mean everyone taking a blood thinner is going to have a problem. It means this is something that you should discuss with your doctor or your pharmacist before combining them. There are also uncertainties between interactions between ginseng and some blood pressure medications, including calcium channel blockers. Well, that one caught my attention because my first blood pressure medication was a calcium channel blocker. These medications relax blood vessels, but they also slow down the conduction of your heart's electrical system, effectively slowing down your heart rate and reducing how hard your heart muscle pumps. And something that you should be aware of, some companies combine these calcium channel blockers with another blood pressure medication into one single tablet. Now, you can Google yours and see if it falls into that category. And according to the Merck manual, combining ginseng with certain medications that affect heart rhythm, such as amiodarone, may potentially cause abnormal heart rhythm. Now think about that for just a minute. Diabetes medication, blood thinners, blood pressure medication, heart rhythm medication. These aren't unusual medications for men of our age. So I pose this question: how many of these do you currently take? As you can see, natural doesn't automatically mean safe for everyone. And the ginseng supplement sitting on the shelf in your local health food store is not going to mention any of this on the label. And then there's one more situation I want you to be careful. If you are having surgery coming up, tell your surgeon about every supplement that you're taking, including ginseng. Some medical sources recommend stopping ginseng at least a week before surgery because of concerns involving blood clotting and blood sugar. Now, I recently had surgery. Now, I brought a list of all my medications and my supplements to the doctor. After he went over the list, he told me to stop taking every supplement and most of the prescriptions that I was taking 7 days before my surgery. But don't decide when to stop it based on something that you heard from me on YouTube. Ask your surgeon. Let the person responsible for your procedure tell you what to stop and when. Okay, here we go. Side effects. Even without drug interactions, ginseng comes with its own side effects that are worth knowing about. The 3 most commonly reported ones are trouble sleeping, nervousness, and excitability. And all 3 of these work against overcoming ED. And then there's been other reported side effects. Some men also experience headaches and digestive problems. Again, that's very different from assuming it's an herb I can take as much as I want, as long as I want. Oh, and if you want to know just how wild the wild west of the supplement world is, even our top medical institutions can't agree on how long you can take it. The Merck manual explicitly states that some authorities recommend capping your ginseng use at 3 months to avoid the side effects like insomnia or dropping blood sugar. Now, meanwhile, the National Institute of Health, the NIH, they draw the line at 6 months before calling it potentially unsafe. When the literal gold standards of medicine are arguing over whether it's 3 months or 6 months, that should tell you exactly how cautious you need to be before experimenting with high dosages. So, should you try ginseng? Well, here's where I stand after looking at all the research. Of the supplements I've looked at so far, ginseng is one of the few where we actually have randomized clinical trials that involve men with erectile dysfunction. Some men have reported improvement, and there might be something to that. But the best systematic review that we have says the average improvement in erectile function was probably small. So, if you're thinking about trying ginseng, I wouldn't tell you yes, but then again, I'm not going to tell you no. I would tell you to do something much smarter. Take the bottle to your pharmacist. Not just a picture of the front of it. Take the actual bottle. Let your pharmacist see the ingredients and the amounts, and bring a list of everything else that you're taking, and then ask, is there anything in this supplement that could interact with my medications? That's what pharmacists do. They're medication experts. And if you do decide to try it, be aware that the dosages used in the studies showing even modest results were significantly higher than what most retail supplements contain. Monitor your blood pressure and your blood sugar if you're diabetic, and watch for the side effects that I mentioned. And if you decide to buy any supplement, look for legitimate, independent, third-party certification. Now, That doesn't prove that the product's going to fix your ED, but it gives you some assurance about what's actually inside the bottle. There's a reason that I'm spending so much time talking about this. I tried ginseng. I was looking for exactly what you are looking for right now. Something natural that would give me my erection back. And I didn't know about any of this. I didn't know about the research. I didn't know about the doses. I didn't know about the possible medication interaction. I was taking medications at that time that really could have mattered. I just saw something that said it might help my ED, and I bought it. And you know what? It didn't solve my problem. Eventually, I realized that another supplement wasn't the answer for me. Now, that did take quite a while, but I finally learned it. What changed my life was changing what I was doing. I learned how breathing affects my body. I changed my mindset. I learned about circulation. I worked with my pelvic floor. I studied the practices involving the organs and energy circulation that has been used in Eastern traditions for thousands of years. And instead of waiting for something in a bottle to change me, I started changing myself. That's the journey that eventually helped me conquer my ED. And it's the journey that I'm teaching today. Next, we are going to look at another ingredient that you're going to see everywhere in men's sexual enhancement supplements, L-arginine. And if you have a history of heart problems, there is something in the research that I especially want you to hear before you decide whether to take it. So subscribe, because I don't want you to miss that one. And if you're tired of looking for your answer in another bottle, go down to the description. I've put everything you need to learn more about the approach that worked for me right there. And when you're ready, I'll be there to help you get started. And remember, you are not broken. And you don't have to do this alone. I'll be right there waiting for you.